This is not a drill.
Hello, good evening, everybody. We're about ready to start our first ever Fullerton Arboretum virtual Blues and Brews, but I want to give you a couple more minutes to get started. Get your laptops or your computers or your TVs all fired up, warmed up, settled down, grab your beers. We'll be right back at you in a few minutes, a couple of minutes. So with that, we'll see you in a bit. Don't go anywhere.
Colette, there's something on the screen that says this is being recorded. Can you just dismiss it?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first ever virtual Blues and Brews. Ray or Andrew, our technical wizards, are going to be helping us out tonight. And Ray, if we could get to you're unmuted. Whoop. Anyway, I'd like to welcome you all to Brews and Blues tonight. This is our first ever virtual Blues and Brews, so it might look like it's our first ever virtual Blues and Brews. Actually, yesterday, Greg Pongetti, our curator, and I held our first ever Q&A. We talked about gardening. People gave Greg Pongetti gardening questions. And so Greg, actually, Mr. Pongetti was able to answer all the questions. I don't think we ever did get to stump him, but many people in the audience tried. And I hope that some people learned about some good gardening tips and will go out and try them, you know, in the future. But tonight we're here to talk about beer. And when we talk about beer tonight, we're going to talk about some with a brewery who's been with the Arboretum for about a decade now. They actually came to us. They sought us out because when they were brewing their beer, they had spent barley and they needed to get rid of it. And you know, after barley's been soaking in water and being turned into beer, it becomes very, very wet and very heavy and is very expensive to get rid of. So they asked us if we wouldn't mind composting it. We said, of course, we'd love to have your barley because we love to make compost. In fact, we teach composting as part of our education repertoire. So that's how we began our relationship with Anaheim Brewery, through composting. So our relationship has developed over the years, and we thought, who best to have our virtual Blues and Brews with? As many of you know, we've had a Brews and Blues now, I don't know, maybe it's been about 8 years. And of course, this year we have to go virtual, and we thought, you know, let's figure out a way to do that. So somebody on my staff figured it out. That's Vanessa. So with that, I'd like to mention a couple of things before we get going on all of this. One is we're in the middle of a matching gift grant from the Meissen Foundation. And so any gift that comes in now, between now and October, is doubled. So if you give us $1, it's $2. And as Greg Pongetti will tell you in a few minutes, I think he calls it double your dollars. So, and Harriet Bolden, our development manager, will come in a few minutes and also talk a little bit more about that. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our friends from Anaheim Brewery, Eduardo Gomez, Barbara, and Greg Yarovac. And they're here to talk about their beers. So there you go. Turn it over to the Anaheim Brewery folks.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you've got your brew kit in front of you. You've got your 4-pack. So dig in and let's see if you've got a gold or a Hefeweizen. We always start with our lightest beers.
So our gold, I always like to tell people, they come in, they ask, what's the easiest beer you have to drink? Recommend the gold, and they always love it and leave happy. It's light in body, very crisp, got a nice honey note to it, and it's a great way to introduce someone who doesn't like beer to beer.
Eduardo, what's the order that we typically talk about beers in when we do a formal tasting?
So normally you want to taste the beers from light to dark, filtered to unfiltered.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And less hoppy to more hoppy.
Less hoppy to more hoppy.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
That's kind of what we'll do tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that we like to also do, because now that you've had a sip, now we can talk a little bit more. We experience anything we eat or drink through our senses. And so first thing you see it, next thing you smell it, and then you taste it. So for those folks who love, and we've all been those people, sometimes I am too, you want to drink out of the bottle, you're missing so much because you miss that aroma, which is a big part of your taste. All right.
The second beer we'll taste with you is our Anaheim Hefeweizen. And this is one of my favorite beers to taste and to make. My very first brewing job in 2000, I worked for a German brewer who taught me how to make Hefeweizen. And a Hefeweizen is a really, really interesting beer. It's all in the name. Hefe is the German word for yeast. It's also the Spanish word for the boss.
That's right.
So yeah, so in this beer, the yeast is the boss, because a lot of what you're going to taste and smell is a derivative of the yeast, not so much the barley in this case. So Weizen, the other half of the word, Hefeweizen, means either wheat or white in German. The white goes back hundreds of years when they first started to produce Hefeweizen, and it was much lighter than the typical dark beers of the day. And so they called it white beer or lighter, the light colored beer. So Hefeweizen. But it's also traditionally made with 50% malted wheat and 50% malted barley. So the Weizen also refers to the amount of wheat that's in it. Wheat, of course, is very high in protein and gluten and contributes a hazy character to the beer. So when we do our look at the beer, it's going to be a little bit unclear, it's a little hazy because of both the proteins from the barley and the wheat and the yeast that's left in the beer because it's an unfiltered beer. The aroma of the beer, if you smell it, now mine's been sitting out for a little while, it's had a chance to warm up, and the aroma is really coming off the glass. It smells to me a little bit like banana, and no bananas were harmed in the production of this beer, but the banana is actually a byproduct of fermentation. All yeast do this. They produce a chemical that it's great. It's biochemistry. It's the same chemical that makes bananas smell like bananas. It's called isoamyl acetate. For those of you who like to Google things, I like to Google things too. And if all yeast produce it, but the yeast that we use for this particular beer produces a lot of that chemical. And so you might catch a little bit of that banana aroma. Other people perceive it as sort of a general citrusy flavor or
Just
bubble
fruity.
gum, like the pink bubble gum you used to get with baseball cards.
Bazooka.
Bazooka. Some people get that. And then when you do taste it, that's a nice beer. You're going to get a little bit of that tartness because the yeast is going to contribute a little bit of sour or tartness right on the sides of your tongue, but it's not going to last very long after you drink it. And so it's a very refreshing beer. I should add too, a lot of people like to drink Hefeweizen with a slice of lemon. Don't do this. It's a touristy thing. I don't know where they started this in Germany. Only tourists would do it. We think that this beer has so much fruit and so much flavor going on that you really don't want to mask that by putting a big old slice of lemon in it. Also, most of the lemons you get from Vaughn's or Ralph's or Trader Joe's or wherever you go shopping
Backyard.
have a lot of wax on them.
Oh, those don't.
And the wax that they use to make the lemon attractive actually helps break up the beer foam. And so you don't want to do that either.
And I'll throw in another little factoid of chemistry. Some people are more sensitive to different flavor compounds than others. So if you don't taste banana, you're not broken. It's not a sign that you have COVID. It just means that that particular chemical you're not sensitive to. It's cool. Some people, when they drink the Hefeweizen, in the finish, you get a little hint of spice.
Like clove.
Like clove, which is for vinyl guaiacol for people who like to Google things.
Only at night.
Well, I hope you all are enjoying the pint glass you got. Excuse me, good beer coming right back at you. Or the taster glass. If you got the taster glass, or if you just saw it online and said, I don't need a tiny glass, I want a big glass. There's a little poem on the back. It says,
1 for a nickel, 2 for a dime. Get your beer in Anaheim.
In Anaheim, right? Well, here's the story. When we were just not quite open, but construction was at a point where we could bring tours in, the Anaheim Historical Society was doing a home tour. And they thought, well, this is a nice way to introduce some revival going on in downtown and the revival of an old business. So this elderly gentleman, I think he was 96 or so.
10 years ago.
We asked him, 10 years ago, he was 96. He came in and he sat down And he looked around and he said, Anaheim Brewery. 1 for a nickel, 2 for a dime. Get your beer in Anaheim. And we're like, wait, what did you just say? Say that again. Well, here's the deal. He said, I'm 96 years old. And when I was a little boy, I was actually born during Prohibition. But I had some older brothers. And you know how older siblings are. They taught him to say, not a dirty word, but a funny ditty about drinking beer. He remembers it so well today because his mom got so mad at him that all he wanted to do was run around. 1 for a nickel, 2 for a dime, get your beer in Anaheim.
Well, when we heard that story, we thought we have got to capture this because it's not in any printed advertising from the day. It's only from this guy's mouth. And so we thought, let's capture it. We'll put it on a glass, and then it's officially here as long as there's glass.
Well, that's great. 1 for a nickel, 2 for a dime. Get your beer in Anaheim. I like that. I'm going to be humming that all night long.
Excellent.
Yeah, I have a question though about the Hefeweizen.
Yeah, sure.
I've seen people drinking it, and occasionally when they pop the bottle, they will pour the beer into the glass, but leave the bottom ½ inch where all of the barley or the wheat or whatever it is that's in there. They won't pour that into the glass. What's the proper way to drink that?
If you want to drink it the way Germans drink it, you do exactly that. You take the top off and you pour it in and you leave just a little bit in the bottom of the bottle and then you swirl it. Because what you're swirling around down there is the yeast and a little bit of the wheat proteins that settle to the bottom while the bottle's sitting on the shelf. And you swirl that around and then pour that in as well because you don't want to leave anything behind. And then that contributes to that cloudy character of the beer.
Okay.
It's totally, that's the German way to do it.
All right. Well, I'm glad I asked. So I was only doing it half right because I didn't swirl it around and pour that last bit in. I just left it out. So I stand corrected.
I mean, if you don't like it, you don't have...
My next Hefeweizen, I'm going to do it that way. So
thanks, Greg.
We've had Chris Anderson at the Arboretum for the last many Brews and Blues. He's been our band. And now Chris is here. He and his group are here to play for us tonight. So I'm going to turn this over to the Chris Anderson group. And there's Chris right now. Hello, Chris.
I started looking really hard.
Welcome to Brews Blues. Welcome everybody. Chris Anderson Group. Thanks for having us. Once was a sweet thing. Now that love in our hand. Now I reach to kiss your hand. Just don't mean a thing. That's cool shopping. Yeah, that's a drag. Cool shopping. You won't give me the time of day. That's cold shopping. Yeah, that's a drag. Cold shopping. Forever causing you pain. You show your appreciation by walking out in a way. Folks that say, yeah, that's right.
Well, thank you, Chris Anderson, and your band there. That was great. Almost like being back in the Arboretum on a August Saturday evening. So now I'd like to introduce Harriet Bolden, our development manager, who'd like to talk to you about, frankly, I guess, how you can help the Arboretum. So with that, let's cue up Harriet.
Hi, good evening. I'm Harriet Bolden, Development Manager here at Fullerton Arboretum. We are in the midst of 26 amazing acres here filled with plants and trees from around the world that are beautiful, unusual, extraordinary, rare, threatened, endangered, all of the above. Many times we look at the Arboretum and we think of it as a botanical zoo. Zoos, whether they're opened or closed, need to take care of the animals. They need to continue the research and the conservation efforts they're doing in breeding and reintroducing animals that are rare and endangered back into their native sites. We're doing the same thing here at the Arboretum. Whether we're opened or closed, we're doing important conservation work, propagating, reintroducing plants into the world through our collaborations with other gardens around the world, as well as making plants that are rare and unusual available for the home gardener. It's hard to imagine that these 26 acres were once an abandoned orange grove, and an amazing effort by our community as well as our university made it possible for this to become an arboretum instead of an asphalt parking lot. Tonight, we have an amazing opportunity to raise significant support for the Arboretum. A portion of what you've paid to Anaheim Brewery for your beer is coming back to the Arboretum as a donation. That will be matched by a fantastic matching grant we've been given by the My Son Foundation. And you have the opportunity to make an additional donation by visiting our website at any time and going to the donation tab, and your donation will be doubled as well. So we thank you for your support tonight. We look forward to seeing you back in the garden again when we can be open. Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet. I should mention that if you buy a membership between now and October, your membership dollars will be they will be doubled also. So you can make a donation tonight or anytime in the near future. If you want to take out a membership, that will also be doubled. And any and all support that you can give to the Arboretum is certainly very appreciated and needed at this time. All of our business operations have been shuttered through this COVID-19 experience. We're going to need some money to get back up and going once we're able to open. Now with that, I'd like to reintroduce our friends over at Anaheim Brewery. They're going to talk about beers 3 and 4.
Right. All right. Well, welcome back. While we were on the break there, we were just discussing the very first Brews and Blues that we went to. And gosh, I forget how many years ago that was. But what a beautiful venue. And God, we miss being out there on that grassy field and listening to the great tunes and smelling the barbecue cooking in the back. So the next two beers that we're going to ask you to pull out, if you have them in your beer kit, and if you don't worry about it, are the Anaheim Red and the Anaheim La Mexicana. Now, there's a little bit of a story about the name of the La Mexicana, but we'll go into that in a little bit. But first, we're going to let Barbara talk to you about the Anaheim Red.
Okay, so the beers we're tasting right now are very malt forward. All beers have malt and hops, but these that we're tasting so far are very heavily emphasize the malt character. So again, we see this is a pretty beer. It's just a beautiful, almost ruby red, depending on how strong a light you're holding it up to.
I say garnet when I feel really intelligent. Garnet.
Garnet. Yeah, some people see garnet. My eyes aren't your eyes, though. I see pretty. Okay.
Sorry.
You'll smell a lot of roasty characteristics, almost a little bit like coffee. Doesn't taste like coffee. Let's take a drink. Oh, man. That smooth, rich flavor, that's a malty beer. When you go to a bar and you're not familiar with what they have on tap and you want to help the bartender recommend something, if this is a beer you like, you tell them, I prefer malty beers. And that's going to help you get something that you're going to enjoy. This beer comes from a recipe that Greg wrote to honor his Irish uncle, Uncle Wilford. Guy was the life of the party. All the pictures from the 50s, his glasses are all kind of crazy. He's like, hey.
And his wife, my great aunt Lydia, never smiled. And so every picture I have of him is Uncle Wilford with his goofy glasses on and my great aunt Lydia going. So what an inspiration for a beer. All right, over to you, Eduardo, with La Mexicana.
All right, so here we have one of my favorite beers, La Mexicana. It's also a favorite amongst a lot of our regulars. It's a great beer, caramel taste, again, light in body, but like Barbara mentioned, really malty. And this beer is just, every time I recommend it to somebody, they love it. And I tell them, see, I told you I wouldn't steer you wrong.
So we developed this recipe in a really unusual way. Normally, we would develop a beer and then develop the label that matches the beer. And in this case, we did exactly the opposite.
Yeah, Chris Maya, who's a friend of ours and an amazing artist, he designed our original labels. So the gold, the red, the Hefeweizen, and the 88, those are original artworks that he created for those beers in particular. But we'd been open, I don't know, about a year and a half, and Chris called me and said, would you guys ever think of making a Mexican beer? And I gave him a little history of how Mexican beer is actually Vienna style, but we'll get into that later. I said, yeah, actually, we'd love to make a Mexican style beer. He's like, okay, good, because
I have a painting to
I have a painting I think would make a great beer label. The name of the painting, La Morena. And we love the painting so much that Greg and I bought it with personal funds, and then we licensed it to the Anaheim Brewery to use on their labels.
But the beer itself, La Mexicana. When we decided to make this Mexican style lager, we thought, let's make something really unique and traditional. We don't want to make another pale yellow beer that doesn't really taste like much. So we did a bunch of research and found one of the earliest Vienna style beers that was brewed in Mexico was called Noche Buena, which is the name for either a poinsettia, the flower, or the night before Christmas.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
You might
And
call it Christmas Eve as well.
Christmas
Yeah.
Eve, the night before.
The night
That's
before
right.
Christmas.
That's why they call it that. So Noche Buena is a very traditional Vienna style lager. It was brewed in a brewery just north of Mexico City, and I want to say it was Cuauhtémoc Moctezuma. Did I say that right? That's hard to say.
It's close enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they went out of business. The original brewery did, but that beer is still produced in the area of Mexico City, and it's a seasonal beer. It only comes out around Christmas time. So of course, La Mexicana is available year round.
Now, the reason that most Mexican beers are based on Viennese styles, you think about when America was settled first on the East Coast, primarily from the British Isles. That's why there's the original breweries going way back to colonial days made ales like you get in Britain. Then when immigration started expanding in the 1800s, we got a lot of people from Central Europe. That's when the big German brew houses like Pabst and Miller
And Anheuser-Busch
and
St. Louis.
Anheuser-Busch and Budweiser, that's when they got rolling. Well, in the late 1800s, who remembers their history, at one point, Emperor Maximilian is given control of Mexico. Well, he's a Vienna guy. So he brings brewers over from Vienna to brew him beer. And that's why the Vienna style is, we mostly think of it as a Mexican beer. Okay, history lesson's over.
Well, enjoy the beer.
Thanks for the lesson on beers 3 and 4 and the Mexican beer. That's interesting. Had not heard that before. Now we're going to have Chris Anderson and his group come back and play us another song for Blues and Brews. Chris, take it away.
You're not sitting alone. I'm having nasty vision. Darling, you're in the mirror. I'm still afraid I won't get you. Maybe you wanna end it. Make you feel like it's a passion I tell you. And you know that I'm not that good. And you know it's how to do the same. I wanna get you.
That was great. Thanks, Chris, and your band. Now we'd like to introduce our curator, Greg Pongetti. You know, if it wasn't for Greg and his highly competent and professional staff of horticulturists, Anna, Amy, Indigo, and Emmanuel, and of course all our volunteers that help them, we wouldn't be able to have the level 4 accredited garden that we have. You know, there's not very many level 4 accredited arboretums on the entire planet. So it's all their hard work that's helped us get there. So with that, let's cue up a message from our curator, Greg.
Hello, I'm Greg Pongetti. I'm the curator here at the Fullerton Arboretum, and I'm standing next to Orchard Lawn, which is surrounded by a collection of subtropical fruit trees, which we call our rare fruit collection. And this rare fruit collection is a very important part of our cultivated collection here at the Arboretum. Now, Orchard Lawn has been the site for much enjoyment of the community. We've had numerous events here, from Brews Blues to Green Scene, and hosting many wedding receptions. But that enjoyment is only one tenet of our mission, which has led to our ArbNet accreditation. The three other tenets are education,